You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville, the show where we explore every episode of the Orville for meanings, morals, and messages, and to see if it aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. This week, Sanctuary, the one where we tumble out of bed and stumble in the kitchen, pour ourselves a cup of ambition. Y'all interest gotta come to life. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi.
And I'm Mike Richards. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Share your thoughts, ideas, and tell us what we missed at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook. You can email us at missionlog-theorville@roddenberry.com. And if you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. We got a comment.
We did?
You want to talk about the comment? Yeah, we got a comment on the Mission Log Patreon Discord channel.
Okay, I missed it.
And it read thusly. It's from Vice Admiral Erickson. We talked a little bit about him before. He founded Barfleet. And I got to go. I got invited to a Barfleet party at Starbase Indy earlier this year. And he said, "I hate to say you're wrong after it's too late to fix a show, but Tuvix." We were talking about Tuvok on Lasting Impressions. The actor Tim Russ playing the museum curator, or at least the researcher. And he said Tuvix was not played by Tim Russ, but Tom Wright. So I stand corrected, and I will try to do better in the future.
Great. I love being correct. Nothing wrong with being corrected.
No, and it might have been just a little Easter egg in there for that. No, I'm just kidding. That was just a straight up oversight.
Easter egg?
An
What's
Easter
the
egg,
joke?
yeah. Oh, an Easter egg is just something that you put there for people to find.
Got it. So you
Like an
see
Easter egg
people were
hunt?
paying attention. I got
Right.
it. So Admiral's paying attention.
He is paying attention, and good for him. And he gets a shout out on today's Mission Log the Orville.
Very
and now
smart.
Here's Jessica with the recap.
Good. Wish me luck, Admiral.
Good luck. Oh.
The Orville and the Union are getting weapon upgrades from a Moclan engineer in light of recent Kaylon attacks. As that Moclan prepares to depart, another Moclan couple has requested transport and boards the ship. They ask Lieutenant Kiali for privacy during their stay, and when they enter their quarters, we learn that whatever they smuggled is precious cargo. An empathetic instructor brings Clyden and Bortus into a parent-teacher meeting to discuss Topa, their son's behavior towards the female students.
She's empathetic, all right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying she's empathetic. That's all I'm saying. When Bortus and Clyden speak to Topa, Bortus learns that Topa believes women are inferior and that his actions against them don't matter. And that he learned this from Clyden. Old wounds abound when Clyden and Bortus yet again disagree about core Moclan beliefs, and it's clear that neither of them have changed their opinion on what should have been done with Topa, keeping him female or assigning him as male. Bortus is sent to the Moclan's guest quarters to see why they are using more than their allotted power. Their excuses do not assuage Bortus, and he finds the source of the power drain, one of the bags of luggage they arrived with. Bortus demands they open it, and they reveal a female baby Moclan. The couple is seeking asylum from Moclis in order to shelter their daughter from the corrective procedure, and plan to head to the planet Riptasia. After appealing to Bortus personally about his own situation with Topa, he decides to shield this information from the captain and the crew for the time being. Bortus takes Topa out of school early to introduce him to the female baby, seeing this as an opportunity to acclimate Topa to the idea of women and men being equal. Thankfully, Topa has promised not to speak of what happened today. A shuttle arrives to deliver the couple from the Orville, and they are escorted out by Bortus and Kiali. Bortus is ordered to report to Mercer's office and is greeted by Ed, Kelly, Dr. Finn, Lieutenant Kiali, Clyden, and Topa. Topa and Clyden are asked to leave after Bortus confirms why he has been called. Topa apologizes to his papa, saying that he didn't mean to tell. Despite Bortus's best intentions, by not informing the captain, he has put everyone's jobs on the line. The couple could have kidnapped the baby for all they know, and Borden didn't even suspect that was the case. Ed commands the crew to find the ship and verify the story about the baby. The ship is not so easily tracked, which is strange because it's not an espionage ship, but a suggestion born of Gordon's Union Point days helped them discover the ship that didn't want to be found. And they learned that they are not on their way to Reptasia. The Orville heads immediately in their direction and finds a gigantic nebula that the ship traveled directly inside of. Gordon navigates the ship inward and they find a habitable planet in a shielded star system. Scans reveal thousands of Moclans living on the planet. Ed, Kelly, Keali, and Bortus take a shuttle down and are promptly surrounded by armed Moclan women. They are escorted into the main village, passing an entire town of women and Moclan children, even walking past the couple that Bortus assisted earlier. They are taken to meet Havina, the same Moclan woman who attempted to help Bortus protect his child all the way back in Season 1, Episode 2, about a girl. Havina reveals that more women are born on Moclus than anyone knows about, and years ago she established an underground network to transport the females out in order to protect them. Moclus suspects that the planet exists, but they have managed to evade detection up to this point. Ed tells Havina that he can request the Union recognize this planet as an independent state so they can be under its protection from Moclus. Havina agrees that this is the best course of action and asks to be part of the discussion. As Havina and Ed travel to Earth together, Havina revels in the idea of women on Earth that are free to write and create as they please. That's my cat. Ed encourages her to search the database for female creatives, and the first woman she stumbles upon is Dolly Parton. This will be the voice of the Moclan female revolution, and I couldn't agree with her more. Havina takes the podium at the Union Council amid yelled complaints from the male Moclan delegates. She makes incredible arguments to the need of their recognition as an independent state, but none so compelling as her quoting a great American poet, "Working 9 to 5 for service and devotion. You would think that I deserve a fat promotion. Want to move ahead, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me." Before the voting can get underway, the Moclan delegate angrily states that if the planet is recognized as an independent state, Moclus will renounce its Union membership. Oh, and all the weapons that come along with it. The Orville remains with the planet as protection, but it seems a Moclan vessel has found the location of that planet as well, with the intention of swiftly handling the problem if the vote goes in the favor of the male Moclans. They are at a standoff until a decision is reached, and Kelly puts the ship on yellow alert. The admirals and Ed meet to discuss this impasse with no clear path to a correct decision. Make them vulnerable to the Kalon or subject an entire populace to corrective surgery. Ed makes the most compelling argument that if they don't stand up for what's right, is the Union still working in favor of the principles it was founded upon? Kelly finds Bortus drinking his woes at the mess hall and asks what he will do if Moclus leaves the Union. Clyden finds Bortus as well and demands that he come home. Bortus sees this as his opportunity to rip into him, criticizing his lack of respect for women and him embracing outdated and ignorant Moclan ways. Go Bortus! It seems other Moclans are inspired as well. Keali radios to tell Kelly that 4 Moclan shuttles are heading for the planet's surface to apprehend the fugitives. The Moclans have no intention of standing down, but the Union cannot do anything until a decision has been made. Kelly is also ordered to stand down, but as Admiral Halsey says, communications through a nebula can be spotty. She may not receive that order.
What do you mean? We just got our antennas upgraded. Oh.
It's been a long day. Kelly wastes no time in heeding the unofficial order and makes to the shuttle. She is thwarted by Bortus, who will not let her go alone. They leave Keali with the Khan. As the shuttle departs, the Moclan ship traps them in a tractor beam. If Tala orders Isaac to fire on the emitters, despite Gordon telling her that this is an act of war. If Kelly can end her career, so can Tala. Fire! And the shuttle is free. A battle is on as the Moclan ship and Orville are now firing upon each other. Kelly and Bortus give the Moclan men a chance to stand down, and they do not. And again, it's on, like Donkey Kong. ping-pong. Set to the track of Dolly's 9 to 5, Kelly Bortis and the Moclan females do a number on the invaders. The Orville is also doing its best to evade damage. Gordon realizes he can move them into the nebula and scramble the Moclan's targeting device. The council continues its arguments, and it looks to be in favor of not getting involved with Moclan politics and thus not losing their weapons or allyship. Ed steps in with, frankly, a totally dumb argument that gets the council to unanimously nod their head and say, oh. A provisional decision is on the table now, ordering the clandestine emigration of the female children to end, not recognizing the planet as a sovereign nation, but in exchange, the male Moclans are not to take any action against them now or in the future. A male Moclan orders the fighting on the planet to cease as a decision has been reached. And while this isn't the best desired outcome, it is a first step in a giant revolution. And Dolly Parton would be proud. Bortis visits Topa at school and sees that he is playing well with the little girl he pushed at the beginning of the episode. All's well that ends well, I guess.
Nice freaking job.
Thanks.
And thank you for doing this recap. It was a ton of work, I'm sure. And so much in this episode and so much to love about this episode.
Sure, totally.
We got to see Kick-Ass Kelly back. We got to see Gordon hugging the donkey in the Orville in the fight with the Moclans. We got Dolly Parton, future Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Dolly Parton, or maybe not. That's up to her. That's her choice.
It's actually not up to her because they kept her on the ballot. So.
Oh, they did. Okay,
they had to. I think there's like several different reasons as to why. Whether it's because the voting had already started, or they're like, no, we made this choice and it's ethics, but they are going to keep her on it.
Well, I don't like that. It's not her choice. It should be her choice.
Yeah, sure. I see that. Yeah.
However, a fun episode written by Joe Menosky, Star Trek veteran, and he joined the Orville in season 2. Directed by Jonathan Frakes. No introduction needed there. Riker, and a longtime director of Star Trek, New Star Trek, Old Star Trek, as well as the Orville. Andrew Cotti did the score, and we already mentioned Dolly Parton and 9 to 5. Such a great song, and injected so much fun into this episode.
Much needed fun too.
Much needed in a serious episode, and that's much like we talked about last week's episode. We had kind of two stories about addiction. One maybe if we discussed relationship addiction with Gordon and Laura Huggins, and we had the Moclan cigarette addiction.
Right.
One was told humorously, which I was glad they cut to that scene every time I started to ugly man cry. And then the other one told quite seriously. But this show does a great job of balancing the humor and bigger issues that we'll talk about. So many admirals in this episode. So many admirals.
All of the admirals.
And they were so on brand, every one of them. So we had Victor Garber, who is kind of like the reasoned intellectual, that he can sort of see both sides and kind of cut a clear path through. Ron Canada, who is just kind of like the Admiral of No, yet again, just we can't do it. Too many problems. Cannot do it. Kelly Hu back as Admiral Ozawa, and Ted Danson, who was more of like the hard line. We've got to get this done. There's a bigger picture here. Kind of.
What would you say
Ozawa
is?
Ozawa's the one I had the hardest time pinning down because we didn't really get to see her much before. She sent Ed and Gordon on the mission in the episode Krill to go and try to get the book, the big book of Krill. So other than that, I wasn't really able to get a lot of her philosophically, but she did, I think, a good job of trying to look at things from different perspectives. As she
was definitely a politician in this one, for sure.
So in the episode Krill, she was like, if we could learn more about them by stealing the big book of Krill, then we can, maybe reach an agreement with them. In this episode, basically the one line she really had that stuck out to me was, we can't use our own human prejudices to determine whether or not what they're doing is right or wrong. And Ed had a great comeback to that, and we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But essentially it was, trust me, I know. So she seems to be kind of also one that kind of balances, both sides of the equation.
She does have a good balance,
Tries to find a good ethical answer. We had 3 actors that I was able to pinpoint with Star Trek connections, major Star Trek connections. Marina Sirtis, who was our empathic school teacher. F. Murray Abraham, who played Ruafo in Star Trek Insurrection. The underappreciated, much maligned, and one of my is definitely in the top 50% for me in Star Trek Next Gen movies. And we had Tony Todd as Dojin, the Moclan ambassador, the sort of outspoken Moclan ambassador. He played grown-up Jake Sisko in the Deep Space Nine episode The Visitor, and he also played Kurn, Worf's brother, in many, many episodes of Star Trek Next Generation as well as Deep Space Nine. And then finally, we have Rena Owens back as Havina, and she was just so good in this role. And we'll be talking about her a lot in this episode. And this episode aired April 11th, 2019 in the U.S., and then sort of trickled out later release dates around the world.
Rena Owen is so good, and I'm glad we found a way to get her back here too. I do think it's odd that she's the only one with this accent, but it's not a big deal.
Well, they might have a New Zealand kind of
contingency, totally. So I have so many questions about this.
Lots of planets have a bottom.
Listen, that's fair. There's things I have questions about. There's things that are fun that happened in this episode. There's things that are dumb that happened in this episode. Yeah. And again, it's not a perfect episode when it, anyone would point to this episode and go, there's still a lot of, I don't know, problematic. I think they're trying to do a better job with handling a lot of the things that maybe they didn't get right in the first season. And mostly, so here's the thing that bothers me is, if you remember, Ed, it's able to be walked back, but Ed does a search on the planet to find the only menstruating Moclan, essentially. And if there are so many female Moclans being born on the planet, it's likely that one was on that planet at that moment. So, yeah, it's true. And I don't know. We don't really know what he searched for. He just kind of said, I have an idea. Right. And he left, and then he came back with Havina. Or went and got Havina and then came back with her. So was it, I don't know that it was what was, That's what I'm saying. It's maybe all of the female babies had been taken off the planet, or that's not what he searched. We're also lucky that she was there, because apparently she's been going back and forth to this sanctuary colony numerous times. 100%. I think she said dozens of times. So serendipity, baby. But that she's been living in a cave too. How is she getting to? Anyway, it's they had this idea wait, there's more female Moclans than there were. Yeah, and we got that idea before, because at first they said once every 75 years. Then it was Clyden's female and Topa's female, and now we go to the planet and we have Havina who's female, and that seems that seemed like they were blowing their once every 75 year thing out of the water. So totally. Yeah. So I think much of this seems like those seeds were planted back then, and kudos for those planting those seeds, so to speak. No, I got it. The other thing, so I did say this in the recap as opposed to recap it. This is the stupidest argument that has ever been made on the planet. So Ed says, if you secede from the Union and you join up with the Krill, the Kaylon are going to kill all of you. They're going to kill you anyway. But the planet that all these females are on are going to evade detection. It's going to fly under the radar. Why would it? They know where the planet is. Why wouldn't they send the... They're already there. It's not been... they could tell it's not going to happen. And also, there are men on that planet too, because we just shipped two men to that planet. It's a good point. So theoretically, I guess what you're saying is Moclan pulls out of the Union. First order of business is exterminate the colony or bring everybody home, do the corrective procedure on them, and just to make them live the rest of their life in jail. Well, Moclan can't do that because they're recognized as a sovereign nation. They're not supposed to do that. Right, not supposed to do that. But okay, Moclans know, we don't ever figure out how the Moclans figure out where the planet is, but I'm sure they do the ion trail that we didn't cover our bases on, right? So they figure out where we are. So... that means that Moclan knows where the planet is, and I'm just extrapolating that if they're under siege, they would either tell the Krill to go get that planet, or they would tell the
somebody's gonna
Kalon
go
to
get
go
that planet.
Someone's gonna get that planet.
But
it's a dumb friggin' argument.
It's a dumb plan, but philosophically I love it, and here's why. Because it's saying, like, if you male Moclans cannot adapt, are going to cling so hard to cultural norms that mean absolutely nothing at this point, then you're going to go extinct. Because you either adapt or you die. And you guys are going to be the ones that are left behind, and this planet of Moclan females is the one that's going to progress.
Right. Yeah. The theory is there.
Tactically, there's maybe some issues.
The theory is there. I don't think as much as a moment as it was for everybody. It just wasn't.
Yeah. Right.
But like Victor Garber should have had the argument prior to that. Ed didn't need to. You know what I mean?
Victor Garber was kind of like, I'm putting an end to this. It's time for the only adult in the room to
shut up, Ed.
Exactly. Shut up, Ed. It's kind of like, I don't know, like if you've ever been in a meeting and this happened, but I've been in meetings where I think I make a pretty salient point, and somebody just looks at me and then they start talking, and it makes a whole lot more sense.
That being said, that's problematic also. It's like, so like this happens to introverts and women in general, where they have an idea and someone goes, it's made fun of. Oh, I have this idea. Seth MacFarlane actually makes fun of it a lot when Peter like listens to Lois and goes, "Well, you were talking about Vogue. Came up with this idea." I've been in both situations where what I've actually stopped trying to do as a woman is saying, "Does that make sense? Does that make sense?"
Right.
And I think we do that as humans in general, so it's not just a female problem.
Right. I agree with that.
Of course, I make sense, and if I don't, I should give you the opportunity to answer or say that, as opposed to like elicit your agreement, like saying, "Does that make sense?"
It's either fishing for a compliment or fishing for criticism,
or something. So I'm trying not to qualify my statements with those kind of things, and we digress. But I did want to say, Seth MacFarlane has been sharing a couple videos. Tom, I can't remember his last name, has been sharing some things from the Orville. And yesterday, Seth MacFarlane on Instagram shared a video or a clip of Victor Garber as a baby in Godspell. And
a wee little baby.
A wee little baby. And he looks like Mork from Mork with like clown tears. It is wild. And he said this is a clip from Victor Garber in season 3 of Orville.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's very cute. It's a joke, but
cannot wait. Speaking of kind of funny things on this show, you ever watch Mythic Quest on Apple Plus?
I did not.
I thought you might be, being as prolific a gamer as you are.
It's up my alley. Sometimes I hate watching things that I could have been on or wanted to be a part of. So I need like a little bit of distance between those things sometimes. So it's really dumb.
Got it. Good show. F. Murray Abraham also plays a major role on that. He's sort of maybe I'll say washed up science fiction author who writes dialogue for the game.
Cute.
So yeah, he does a nice job on there. And also, I don't really... This is the kind of show that doesn't rely on a lot of special effects or anything.
Right.
It relies more on those conversations like we just talked about.
Right.
But I did notice that there were some nice shots in this episode. The flyby of the Moclan space station looked good with a bunch of Union ships there. The nebula looked good.
Even... The flying away from the Moclan ship being attacked was really pretty.
Right.
Some really good compositional shots, like when you see Bortus and Clyden standing and Topa's at the end of the table. So it definitely, Frakes knows it definitely felt like a Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And not in a hit you over the head Star Trek episode, but it just it clipped and it was interesting and intriguing.
But those kind of arguments, I mean, those are arguments I can hear Kirk making, I can hear Picard making those things. And we'll get to that more later, but if we're not going to stick to our principles, what are we defending?
Right.
If we're not going to be who we say we are, what are we doing? And those are the kind of things that are going to come up over and over again in this episode. I got a question for you.
Oh,
I know Bortus is third in command, so it's Ed Kelly Bortus.
Okay.
But security is Talakiali's is up Talakiali's alley,
Right.
so to speak. Why send Bortus to go check the power surge?
So this is also, it's so interesting that you're asking that question, because I too was like, well, is Bortus on duty even right now? Because he had they just in the parent-teacher conference, unless he got called in while on shift, and then went to go home to talk to Topa. So he's still on shift, technically.
I guess you're always on duty. Maybe it's because he's right across the hall. Maybe because he's Moclan and they think he can relate. But
I thought it was that. I thought it was relate.
Hey.
However, what is his role?
he's third in command, so he's basically, I would think he's like a command officer. Like
is he an engineer? He's not an engineer, right?
I think he's probably got some engineering background, but I think he's more of a decision maker.
Yeah, so then maybe it's not a security breach so much as an engineering electrical thing. Because, like, what does he operate on the board, I guess is my question.
Right.
So I'm with you. I'm with you. I also don't think he was across the hall. I think it looked like he was across the hall.
Okay.
I tried to question it, too. I was like, oh, did he just walk across the...
But it worked out, because he could relate more than, maybe more than Talakiali could. I don't know how she would have handled the situation.
Well, she probably would have sentenced that baby to death like she did that man that loved her.
Or she could have done what she said and, brought it to the doctor to do a DNA scan. So I was not, you talked about it being a Star Trek episode. One thing that was very Star Trek about this episode is, in fine Trek tradition, they were not afraid to glue stuff to babies.
Oh, babies. Poor babies. Hopefully they just put something
on babies and
What if they just put something on the baby? Maybe what if it's like the lady who takes all the pictures of the babies in barrels, and looks like grapes and flowers.
I think it was Gorilla Glue, man. I think that baby's scarred for life.
Poor baby.
There's rules. We know the rules. Do you ever worked with babies on set or anything like that?
Not directly, but I've been on set while they were with baby was on set, and there are rules, but this baby was did not have prosthetics. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
No, it was the rules I know for babies, especially the younger they get, the less amount of time they're allowed to be on set. That's why they love twins.
Right.
That's why twins are great.
That makes a lot of sense. Or 18-year-olds that look like they're 13.
That's also the case. Yeah. 18 to play younger. TPY. You'll see.
Okay. Did you buy the amount of I don't know, shade that was being thrown at Bortus when he was called to Ed's office?
I think it could have been even harsher, don't you think?
The doctor was like, I could have done a DNA scan and verified their story. And Tala was like, that might not even be their baby. First of all, they boarded a ship under false pretenses. And Bortus was like, I did not get the impression that the baby was kidnapped. I kind of feel like it was a little bit of I hadn't seen that group be that much of a stickler for the rules.
Sure. I think they were concerned about their jobs and the baby.
Mm-hmm. And also, they're in a very, I think, tenuous alliance with the Moclans right now at a time where there's a threat from other folks.
Well, and he lied to them. It's not like he went to Ed and said...
Yeah, but that's just a Tuesday with Bortus.
This is true. Maybe what he did was probably deserving of a worse punishment than what they gave him. So I don't know that I went... I was like, damn, because he had 3 women looking at him like, what did you do? And he was about to get in the pecking order for sure. But... I don't know. I don't think it pinged for me as disproportionate.
And why didn't Bortus just throw Clyden out the airlock in the last episode when he was in the airlock smoking? It would have been like, poof.
Oh, cigarettes.
Sorry.
Oh
man, my bad.
I was addicted to nicotine. Ooh.
My bad. I meant to open this door, not that door.
Yeah, he's... Why do you think... I don't have a philosophical answer or a theory even, but why do you think Topa is taking after Clyden more? Because maybe Clyden's
Probably
around
because
more?
he's home, I would think more. I think sex lagoon or not, it seems like Bortus works a lot,
Right,
or is not home a lot. And he did mention specifically that Clyden really doesn't leave their quarters much.
Right, that's a good point.
So I think he's probably got a lot of one-on-one time with Topa. But these are the kind of things that you need to work out, before you have an egg. Right?
One would think, but I guess they just didn't anticipate females.
Yeah. So
they couldn't have anticipated all this.
No, they couldn't, I guess. But they, they have that first date. I think it's called a Gamaska.
Yeah, something like that.
So maybe not on the Gamaska because you probably just want to have a good time there. But then they become Coda Sheiks, which is boyfriend and boyfriend.
Coda Sheiks,
right? And then maybe around that time, if they decide, hey, if we have a kid, we're going to teach it to be misogynistic and sexist and keep with the old traditions, or no, let's try to be a little more progressive. But they make that decision then, and if they talk about it then, all they got to do is extract a tooth, feed it to each other, and they're out.
They're out.
Right? They're done. That's all they got to do.
Well, not with divorce. Oh, because of the boyfriend thing.
Yeah,
you're totally right.
Yeah, still boyfriend.
But now, let's not forget, no one knows that females are being born all the time. So they wouldn't know that there was a different way to be, except for what limited exposure they had with other races.
I still think they could have discussed the clinging to the old ways versus trying to.
But what would be the new ways is my argument.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't have an idea of what new ways. Literally, Bortus is. Like, they do know that some male Moclans can be attracted to females. They know that, but that's punishable by death or whatever.
They didn't know that female Moclan babies existed.
They didn't, but I'm saying as a society, they know that there's a problem that could happen.
Right.
And they didn't know that there's as many as there are.
No, but they knew they thought one every 75 years. So
but I guess what I'm saying is
a little bit of a stretch.
I don't know how much room there was for even other ideals because
I get your point.
So
because it is such a uniform society.
Right.
That people do kind of think the same way and act the same way, and they have their. They have their traditions, they have their cultural norms, and very much there's certain parts of the world that, being an individual is more accepted, and there's other parts of the world where, it is very much expected that you are going to go along with everybody else.
Right.
And we had another comment, and it was with the episode Deflectors that discussed the line about mediocrity is the only thing that's above suspicion. And I was told that that's very much an Eastern philosophy, that you are to kind of be part of the group, part of the team. And if you did want to excel at things, and you could, you gave credit to the team. You gave credit to other people, not to yourself. And I think the Moclans were very much. It was pointed out to me by our longtime listener, Mike Gertis, that is very much an Eastern philosophy, that you would sort of put your best effort inside the crowd, inside the group, and not go off on your own and be too individualistic. You could still excel, but if somebody said, "My God, man, how are you so good at that?" you would say, "Oh, I'm just part of a great team, and I'm just doing the best I can." It's just the team that's good. It's not me. So you're right. I think the Moclans did have that very much cultural expectation that they would be very, very uniform with one another.
I was trying to think of what else was silly. So Gordon's drunken night.
That was fun.
It's so funny. Yeah. It's again.
We crashed into a tree. They caught us then, but before that, we were invisible.
Great, simple use of humor, and also furthering. Actually, Gordon was on point this whole episode. He's he really was you shouldn't do this. This is an act of war. Actually, I could do this. He really had great suggestions.
Yeah, a few lines. So yeah, that suggestion. He had the going into the nebula and doing tech on the tech in there somehow to hide their.
And you're so right that Kelly is such a badass in this episode.
She is, and she was a badass in she was being held by the Gilliac. She's just every once in a while her badassery and If the Stars Should Appear was apparent when she was getting beaten and just was not going to be overwhelmed or overcome by that torture that she was in. Yeah, I love seeing Kelly kick some ass. And I like that Havina, when she found the Dolly Parton song 9 to 5 in the library, Ed was like, there's a lot of other stuff in there too. And she was like, no.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. That's inspired. She's so right. Like, I don't know what it was about that moment, but the second you hear it and how she acted, how the actress acted by hearing that, I got chills. I was like, oh.
More to say about that later. I'll just talk about the fun part right now before we move on, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
We don't want to trivialize war here on Mission Log the Orville. But that was a really fun battle scene, both on the ground and in space, with 9 to 5 playing. And just that those different cutaways of Bortus and Kelly on the surface, as well as Gordon flying the ship in space against the Moclans. That was a lot of fun.
It really was, and like you said, very much needed for a heavy topic episode.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Kelly and Bortus it's not the first time they fought together, and they do a really good job. They do fight really well together.
Yeah, and I loved the way too that he refused to follow her order.
Yeah,
she was like, "You may have to fight against your own people," and he was like, "We're wasting time."
Sweet.
Good for him. That was awesome.
It's a good ship. It's a good crew. We've been them with now for over 20 episodes, and we love them for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's really I love the Orville.
You ready to move on?
I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so we have come to the part of the episode where we're going to explore the big ideas of the episode Sanctuary and discuss the messages, morals, and meanings, and discuss whether or not the episode aligns with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. So listen, Mike, it's so important that you listen to women, so I'm just going to tell you what this whole episode's about.
And I'm just going to listen.
Great. No. So what's the things that stood out for you in this episode?
Man, the first one that it's just it's so incomplete, and we're lucky that we've done such a deep dive, just over the course of the last few months, that About a Girl is still somewhat recent in my mind.
Right,
that was episode 2 or 3, I think number 3 of season 1, 2. So good. And this really does kind of complete that and looks at that kind of I think completes a lot of those thoughts. And like you said, maybe it was a way to kind of revisit those and put some more depth and nuance and more layers on some of the issues they explored then. But Havina, with her her line, every revolution begins with a single act of defiance. And I think it was Ed that said, "Was that you?" Meaning, did you?
Kelly asked. Yeah.
Kelly asked, "Was that you?" And she said, "No, I don't know who it was." So of course I had to look it up. And in a speech Mahatma Gandhi gave, he explained how exactly that a single act of defiance is responsible for starting a revolution. That speech was in Hindi, and the one-line translation of that Hindi speech is every revolution begins with a single act of defiance. So I loved that simple idea that's simple enough to put into one line, but big enough that it could cause just tremendous changes in a civilization, especially an unjust one.
Yeah, it does. I think what's so important about that, especially because you could, we want this pretty bow wrapped up after the episode to go, come on, the solution's so obvious. They should be allowed to be themselves and not, change. But our society doesn't work that way.
Right.
And as many setbacks that we have steps forward, and then we have more setbacks. I will say we could stand to be better as a society. There was the civil rights movement was huge, and then we took huge steps back, and that necessitated the 2020 marches and things like that. And then people were like, "Oh, we're going to make promises, and we're going to donate to companies," and then I think the number is of the 10 million that was promised in donations, 2% of it was actually paid.
Oh no.
So, and that's not what the episode's talking about, but one victory will then inspire another victory,
Right.
or one person standing up will then inspire another person standing up, is the hope. And by the way, I was wrong. It is the third episode, because I think the second episode is when what's her face is tries to do the captain chair.
Yeah, command performance.
And then we learn about the egg at the end of that one.
Right, because Bortus wasn't around because he was sitting on his egg in
Right.
in his quarters. Also, lucky that Talakiali didn't need a whole episode to figure out how to sit in the big chair, so she just took to it like a duck to water, which was nice.
I did think about that. That was really funny. I thought the way she sat down in the chair was really silly, because I think she knew the enormity of it.
Did she just like kirk
did
it
a
up,
bounce? No, she sat and then like adjusted herself, and it was just silly because she was so little in comparison to the chair. It wasn't like odd or bad. It just was silly. I just noticed it. But she also had a moment to let us in on how big of a moment this was too, as an actress. But lately I've been watching a lot of shows and movies, and I can't help but think about what the and cut is afterward.
Right.
So I just my mind's been elsewhere when I'm watching film and TV right now.
But and you're right that she did actually have the time to say, look, Kelly's taking a chance. She might end her career. I know this could end my career, but this is really important, and we have to make a stand right now. And I thought it was great. And along with the lines of what you were saying, the line that Havina said. In her speech, the history of moral progress can be measured by the expansion of fundamental rights to those who have been denied them.
What a gorgeous sentence.
If there is nothing else, that I'm going to take from this episode to try to make me a better human being, that right there.
What it made me pause to think about, even though we're all well aware of this, but how simply we have accepted that other people that are different from us are less deserving, less intelligent, or not as worthy. And whether anybody on this planet would whether there are people that are in my family that would tell me that this is not a racist nation. I was raised, even if it was never explicitly said, and it was also in my household, that I had a pretty well made because I was white. We do have it. We have the benefit is in our favor as white people in this culture.
Right.
And, I'm going to forget her name, but this amazing female activist who did the test with the kids, I think in the 70s, where she's like, all the kids with blue eyes are going to be the superior kids in this class, and all the kids with brown eyes are going to not be. It's just to give them the feeling to understand oppression. And within moments, the kids were tearing down the blue eyes or whatever. They were tearing down the lesser. They had to work. The kids with the blue eyes had to wear the collars.
So did this famous female activist also pay for therapy for these kids for the rest
She should have, probably. It was actually gutting, because you see kids that were actually friends pushed another kid on the playground because they were the blue eyes. And then she flipped them the next day. This is the same woman. She was on Oprah, and she was talking about how racism is a mental illness. And she also, there's another famous viral video of her talking, orating to a crowd, and she goes, who here would want to be treated how Black people are treated in this country today? And it's a room full of white kids or white people, and no one raises their hand. So she says, that's interesting. What that signifies to me is that what's happening. You don't want to do anything about what's happening. It's bad, and you don't want to do anything about it. So
you recognize the situation, and you're not willing to.
And no one's saying that all white people have it great. And no one's saying that there aren't successful Black people. And there aren't saying that there aren't successful of all race and whatever. Systematically, this culture is not in the favor of people that are other. And that's what that really just gave me pause, because we have found ways to subtextually teach that to to people like we manifest destiny. We deserved this country. The way people justify taking the nation, the native nations away from them. Well, they used to fight each other, and so we call,
Sure.
Anyway, there's a lot you can do to justify, but then what happens when everyone is free to be themselves? Probably some better stuff can happen in the world, usually.
I would hope so. I mean, we've got serious problems. We need everybody to contribute. In order to get everybody to contribute, they need to be free to, think about bigger problems than just food, shelter, clothing, and where their next meal is coming from, or where their next overnight's going to be. Where they're going to spend the night, excuse me. So if we can get everybody on board and get everybody contributing, then we as a society are going to be a whole lot more successful. Now, we talked a little bit with that about people being oppressed, and that's why I think 9 to 5 is such a perfect song for this. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. I mean, the song literally reflects the struggle of people who work hard, but aren't offered the rewards of their work the same way that other people benefit from their work. There's the line that, you're lining other people's pockets and the money is going to end up in their wallet and not their own. And it's, the movie, if it's nobody's seen it, it's 42 years old. So I feel like we're outside of the spoiler zone. But 3 women working in, corporate America.
And they kill their boss. I'm just kidding.
That's not far off. But they don't, get the rewards. They don't get the raises. They don't get paid the same as the men that they're working with. But all of their efforts are going to make other people rich, and they should be deserving of promotions, but they're not. Some other guy's getting a promotion because it's a dude and it's just kind of an old boy club. So that's why this song I think is perfect, because it's upbeat and it's funny and it's Dolly Parton, and there's just something that kind of makes everybody smile. When it's Dolly Parton, but it's also, I think, a very, very kind of serious undertone that if you put the effort in and that if you do contribute, you should at least have access to the same reward structure that other people have.
And that's why so many people use the diagram of like, everyone's running the same race, but if you take out all the obstacles, who's going to get to the finish line sooner?
And I work for a company and I work hard and I'm never going to make CEO money, and that's, and that's fine. I totally get that.
Not with that attitude.
Oh, that's it. Still, I mean, doing what I'm doing now, I'm never going to make CEO money. And that's fine because they exercise a higher level of risk, a higher level of leadership, and a higher level of, responsibility and accountability. Do I believe the opportunity for me to move up to that one day based on merit should be there? If I wanted it and I had the talent and ability and could contribute, of course I do. But I do understand that, different people in different roles do get rewarded differently. I just think the access to those rewards and the ability to move up and the ability to move up based on merit, not based on demographics, should be, valued.
When you say demographics, what do you mean?
I mean, those obstacles that you talked about, it should be a level playing field. So
right.
It shouldn't be less obstacles for me, because let's face it, I'm part of the demographic that has fewer obstacles.
Yes.
And everybody should. I don't think that's fair. I think everybody should be given the same opportunities to excel, to create, to find their passion, and to contribute to society.
Well, yes, and I just want to make myself clear that it's not like someone's going, oh, that person's a black person, I don't want to give them the job, because you couldn't get away with that. And yes, there are biases. There's a whole practice now where people don't put their names on resumes, because if you see a name that you can't quite pronounce, you're probably not going to call them in for a job. Right. That's a real clear sign of biases and, ignorance playing a key role in that. But the real systematic element of it comes with zoning or gerrymandering or lower income schools and stuff like that, based off well, why wouldn't we share the wealth across all school systems? If schools do better with better tests and they get more money, then it would make sense that places that didn't do well with good tests would continue to do bad in testing and continue not to get good money. But that's all legal in the system.
It is.
The drug laws were different, for crack cocaine and cocaine, or at least which is the same exact thing.
Yeah, and the enforcement of those laws is vastly different also. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think I've dropped this line in a while, so it probably bears repeating. When you look for talent, or when you allow talent to develop in places that you normally don't look, you're gonna get more talent, not less. Right, you're going to find more talent, not less. And more people are going to succeed. More things are going to change and get better.
There are people, especially in this industry, that lament, I'm losing my jobs. I'm losing my writer job to, diversity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, actually, you're losing your job because you actually weren't as talented and you just weren't competing against a fairer pool. Right. So either be better or... mire in mediocrity.
And it's back to the thing we said before, about Ed's maybe less than articulate argument that, hey, male Moclans, adapt or go extinct. Adapt or die.
That's a really good point. I would say, as opposed to a bad argument, it's not very articulate. And You're totally right. Because also, what is the first thing we see when they walk on that planet? Badass chicks.
Badass. Kind of reminded me of Black Panther.
Sure, totally. I mean, definitely a female army strong. I don't know, though, if there was 6,000 people on that colony and only 4 shuttles landed on the planet, how they wouldn't have been able to overtake those Moclans men.
And you think they'd probably be pretty well ready to defend themselves, too.
They were besieged, too, so that's a little bit fair. But
it was also only Kelly and Bordas fighting back, and they were able to do that successfully. So
that's totally fair.
I was a little curious about that. The next thing, so we have the the argument that we just talked about, or the message, moral, and meaning, about fundamental rights and including people that have been denied them. Excuse me.
Yes.
The next kind of big thing that I plucked out of here, and let me see what you think of this, is the argument that if we're not willing to stand up for the values that this union was founded on, this was Ed speaking in the conference room to the admirals, if we're not willing to stand up for the values that this union was founded on, what exactly are we defending? And I think that is so on point for, what I've seen much of my adult life, and people and governments saying that they value a certain ideal, but then being willing to put those ideals aside for security reasons, for defensive reasons, for energy reasons, for lots of reasons. And it's just one of those kind of gut checks that we have to be the people that we say we're going to be, right? I get the real world, you have to make compromises. In my fiction, right, in the future, people that I aspire to be like, I want to see them say who they're going to be and then be those people and stick by those principles. And that's what Ed was advocating in this. And that, I think, is a very time-honored Roddenberry-esque Star Trek philosophy.
So, yeah, that's what I was curious while you were saying that. What is, how you kind of know what the Star Trek philosophy is, what the fleet office philosophy is there. But I don't know that I could tell you exactly what the Planetary Union philosophy is in general. But I'm looking at fandom.com, and it says Ed Mercer says this: we are over 300 planetary governments working together to ensure that no single world imposes its will upon another. We treat each other as equals. So that would mean that that's their mission statement. And so you're right. What ends up happening is in all of our lives, and this is something that it happens down in the micro level to the macro level, where you start bending your morals. Right. Because this situation and that situation, and I don't want to be cut and dry about this one, and then the next thing you know, you've bent so much, you're close to breaking. So are you even closely aligned with those morals at the end of the day?
It's a slippery slope, and we talk about that. And one night on Mission Log Live, we had a producer from Bad Robot who worked on the shuttle disaster. It's funny, I remember his Twitter handle. I don't remember his name. I think he's at the Big Zipper on Twitter. Last name Zipper. Cannot remember his first name off the top of my head. However, on that special, he talked about NASA having rules that they normally followed, but because there was pressure to launch and because the weather was adverse, then those rules sort of got bent and revisited, and ultimately that led to disaster. In my field, in aviation, it's easy to not follow the rules once, you get away with it. You don't follow it again, you get away with it again. You start not following different rules, and now you start to wipe away all the levels of redundancy that keep everybody safe. So the important thing is to be the people you say you're going to be and act that way, even when it's difficult, not just when it's convenient.
And yet, we also see Ed break the rules as a captain. And this ship breaks the rules. So what is the difference between acting in the right way? Whose decision is that? I'm not arguing against your point. I'm just saying I can see how those things get confusing. The lines get blurred.
I definitely do see those, but I think there's big rules and there's little rules, right?
Right.
Like not letting one planet impose. One civilization impose its will on somebody else. That's a big rule.
The fact that they can argue. That they're arguing, Ted Danson characters arguing that this shouldn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, out of fear. It's all out of fear, is that decision.
Right.
And there's
the flat out line. We need to be able to defend ourselves. And that's when Ed said, well, if we don't even hold up to our values, what are we defending?
What are we defending?
That is a great question.
It's a great argument.
Mm-hmm. Now, we also talked in, I believe it was deflectors, about rules, societal rules, maybe religious rules that had a place and time, maybe to propagate your species, propagate your subculture, that really don't have a place in modern society. And Bordas said, you cling to traditions that serve no useful purpose. Your mind remains closed, and you wish to raise our child to embrace this ignorance. Apparently, at some point on Moclan, it was important for them to just have males. I'm not going to even speculate why.
I mean, they talked about it.
So they came up with this whole, if we have a female, we'll do a corrective surgery, and then they can be male, and then our society will work. That, I hate to even speculate on why that may have been the case, or the perception. But whatever it is, it's no longer the case.
Right.
And there were rules, norms that were followed by human beings, over the course of this last several thousand years for reasons that no longer apply, yet people cling to those rules still.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I mean, I think it's bad. Here's what I see our society going through if I were to look at it through this lens. A lot of people are having a hard time accepting that sex isn't gender and gender isn't sex.
Right.
And that a woman is not a woman if they don't have the appropriate so-called genitalia. That's one example, right? Prior to this, even though there are still people that have a hard time with it, homosexuality is bad in general, right? Because marriage is between a man and a woman. There are some people that to this day believe that women will never understand the plight of men and how hard it is to be a man. I've literally been told that by a dude. And I'm not claiming to know what it's like to be a man. I'm just to say that their struggle as a man is not equal to mine, or makes us unequal, is outdated. It's an outdated thought.
Right.
what ends up happening when you get a lot of people that believe something, were raised, indoctrinated to believe something, and then they're told that the thing that they believe is wrong. They're told that marriage is between a man and a woman, and they see two men together. They see two women together. That's not what I was told. That breaks their perception of reality and their sense of identity. When that comes into question, your foundation, which was probably, unfortunately, weak to begin with and tenuous, is now rocked. And you have one of two choices: fight it or go along with the program. And 9 times out of 10, our fight or flight kicks in because we're not comfortable taking a look inward to change our perspective and change what that fundamental truth that we once accepted means now for us. So it's easier, the old adage is it's easier to destroy than it is to create. I can take all day to build a Lego design, and then it could take 2 seconds for my nephew to destroy it. 2 seconins. And there's a satisfaction that they get out of that, too. You know that there's also a satisfaction. People get the same sort of dopamine hit. If I came up with an idea and I go, oh my God, I had this great idea. They get the same dopamine hit when they tell the idea as they do with creating it. So, there's so many reasons to, there's so many reasons to shortcut this world, or what we're learning about with mental health. I think what we're seeing is like a chaos theory in action with our culture, where this one religious group fed this idea, this other culture said mental health is, we shouldn't even talk about it. If you have mental health issues, you're probably crazy. And then we get this amalgamation of, this is the one way to live the life. And so we don't do self-reflection well. We don't take criticism well. We don't allow men to be emotional and and be in touch with their divinity of female divinity. We don't let women, we demonize women that are masculine and buck the norms, and yet still have expectations of them to be ultimate feminine. So what I see is a lot of anger and hate and vitriol from people that are unwilling to examine themselves. And so it's easier to judge other people because it challenges their way of thinking.
And I just wonder what it is about us as human beings that we are more willing to cling to ancient traditions than real world reality. And it's just a question.
But again, that's foundational. That there's a so maybe this is what I was missing from that argument. All of our programming subconsciously happens from when we are born to age 7. So you are taking input into your limbic system. I think that's right.
That makes sense.
Where which is your fight or flight reflex, your whole sense of being, and your coping, and your love, and your parents not loving you, it's all formed in that moment. Doesn't mean you can't train out of it, but we're not encouraged to as a society because we don't talk about mental health easily. We're getting better. So, of course, if you're being told to go to church, or if you're being told that pigs are dirty, or if you're being told men and women are the only pairing, this would happen too if we lived in a society that said only men and men.
Right.
Sarah Silverman said,
and you're saying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you're saying that foundation is strong enough even though you might be
intelligent enough.
Intelligent enough. In plain sight of maybe overwhelming evidence that supports a different reality, but because that was so foundational, most people are going to cling to that.
It is in the sense where that's my theory, and it gives me just a little bit more empathy for people that are horrible about this stuff than maybe than we want to give them. But I also know this to be true because I experienced it. I was raised on a whole different side of the totem pole. Not even the totem pole. I was raised on a whole different side of the fence about a lot of the things I believe now. And a humility and wanting to be a better person was part of that journey, and it was hard fought for a little bit.
Good.
I'm grateful.
Good for you.
I'm grateful for the people I was surrounded by. I was grateful to be raised by the people I was raised by because they also gave me a brain that challenged the norm, even though I was raised to be a certain way. And again, I wasn't the most bigoted person. I wasn't the most anti-person you've ever met, but I was conservative and I had a lot of other opinions that I don't have now. And when you're challenged, when someone tells you you're not this, and that's your belief of yourself, your first instinct's going to be to fight that person or leave that person.
Yeah.
Or so it's a lot. I think that's a big part of it.
It's a big one, and I think what we all need to aspire to, and this is something that I heard for the first time on Mission Log a long time ago. It's one of the things that hooked me on the show. Was John Champion said we're not doing our job as a human being if we're so overwhelmed by our beliefs that we're unable to accurately assess reality. And that just, I stopped and rewound that about 3 or 4 times, and that has stuck with me. I use that on my team at work to give them just sort of a thought exercise on what that means. And I will always say that, yes, we're raised a certain way. Yes, we're taught certain things. Yes, some things are foundational. But at some point, you become a thinking, living, decision-making adult, and you've got to put those beliefs aside and accurately assess what's happening right in front of you.
2 things I will say to that exact point. And man, John has done that to me a couple times too, where he's like stopped me dead in my tracks and went, wow, that's incredibly insightful. And it also, you can see in the way he lives that that's true. He believes in that philosophy. One of the things that we don't do well as a society is allow people to be wrong. We don't allow people to admit mistakes. So one of the things I've learned, and I would encourage other people to learn or work on, is accepting you hurt my feelings. You said this wrong thing. And then us who give that feedback to them, being willing to let them go, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Or I'm going to take that note. Or let me think about it.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good meaning, moral, and message to get out of this episode.
Sure. Great.
Yeah, I had raising kids is tough. It's even tougher when you're married to Clyden. No, I was good. I was actually beginning to type. It's even tougher if you don't agree on if you don't agree on everything. We talked a lot about clinging to traditions that serve no useful purpose. Myself personally, all I can do is look for opportunities to recognize maybe my preconceived notions and challenge those. And then finally just try harder to recognize, situations where, one group is being, denied their fundamental rights. And it's just so ingrained in the fabric of our culture that people don't even think about it. So I will personally try to recognize those instances that I have personally overlooked over the course of my life and try to be better, act better, do more.
For the same exact thing that you're going through, everyone that disagrees with you about something else also has a reason how they got to that too. Doesn't mean you have to entertain that, but we do have to realize that most people are justified and think that they're well-meaning with those things. The philosophy I live by, and will continue to do so, and this is very fortifying in that, is be the change that you want to see in the world. And one of the things that I think is the hardest thing to do is be Ed Mercer in that moment, is what are we standing up for? To be the one person that's saying the thing that no one else wants to say. It's really hard to be the person who goes, that's weird. Let me stand up, let me help that person, or let me just take one step out of the norm. So we might be encouraging people we don't agree with to do that as well. But we all have to just try to fight a little bit harder for what we believe in, even if society is not with us on those things.
That is a beautiful thought, Jessica, and that's a great way, I think, to wrap it up.
I want to talk forever. Mission Log the Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production by the unstoppable Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to connect and chat with us is podcast.roddenberry.com.
Join us next time on Mission Log the Orville as we discuss the episode tomorrow. and tomorrow, and tomorrow.
Bye.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.